Hey guys, have you ever watched someone swing a baseball bat and wondered what was going through their mind? Every swing has its own story. And it's not just about practicing the hours and hours in the cage or having the right setup, the right stance, the right swing. The real secret is in the way that we think. Sometimes we don't get the result we want and we think it's because of how we swung the bat. But a lot of times it's really just about what we were thinking. Just like in the game of chess. You have to think before you move. In baseball, you have to think before you swing. You have to know the game. You have to know the pitcher. And you have to know how the pitcher is approaching you. So in today's video, we're going to talk about just that, what good hitters do. It's all about using our brain and about having a game plan. And by the way, I'm Geoff Rottmayer. I run Athletic Mission Baseball Academy. Let's dive into today's video. When we get to the core of what hitters really want, they want to have quality at bats. They want to have good at bats to give good pitchers. So when we look at like the traditional pattern of when guys are not having good at bats, it typically looks something like this. So typically they think it's a physical thing, right? So if they're not having good at bats, it's because of their swing is off, and they're going to go make changes to their swing. And a lot of times, when you make the initial change, because it's something different and gets you away from what you were thinking, you'll get some initial results. But in reality, that adds a layer of complexity to the brain because it gets you away from being as distinctive as you need to be when you're in that batter's box trying to get a hit off this pitcher. The next thing that they'll work on is they'll change their routine. So a lot of times, you getting away from your routine and doing what you need to do is part of the reason why you're struggling. So as the season goes on, the season gets old, the season gets weary, it's really hard to maintain a routine that allows you to be prepared each and every time, especially when you don't have the outcome and you don't have the control over how much time you have to prepare and all the other external factors. It starts cutting into your routines and you start taking things away and start adding things that you don't really need that just make things a lot harder. And finally, when those things don't work, you start copying the guy that's doing really well, right? The guy that's, the coaches love, the coaches trust him, he's producing well, and he's having great at bat. You start looking and start watching him and wondering what he's doing, and then you start trying to mimic what he's doing, even though he's a very different hitter than you are. When we get to the core of what hitters really want, they want to have good at bats. They want to have quality at bats. And typically, if they have good at bats, despite the outcome, they're pretty happy. Even if they have like a bad at bat and they get the result, they're not as happy as they would have if they would have had a quality at bat. So what is a quality at bat? The way I define it is more about having a game plan. It's about having a plan. It's about having an approach. It's about making adjustments in real time. And then it's about sticking to it and then being able to execute it. So that's what it is. That's a process-driven definition for a quality at bat. Right now you go on the internet, find a quality at bat chart, and it's all result-driven. And that doesn't help hitters because now they're focused on an outcome instead of the process that creates the outcome. So when we look at this is typically the pattern that we see hitters go through whenever they're not having good at bats. So poor at bats lead to something physical that they change. Typically it starts with their swing. They think they're going to do something different with their swing, and initially it will help because it will get their mind off of what they were doing and what they think the issues are. It will get their mind being excited about the potential solution that they came up with. But a lot of times that eventually catches up to them, and it really adds a layer of complexity to the brain. And now it takes away from the instinctive nature of the swing. So that's the problem with making swing changes, is initially it works, but then it doesn't when you start facing good pitchers that run pitches away from what you're trying to do. The next part that they'll change is their routine. They'll start getting away from the things that they were doing that helped their brain prepare for the matchup. And a lot of times they cut corners and make adjustments subconsciously. They just don't know they're doing it. And so when they do that, it starts to interfere with their preparation and what they got to do. And so now they think they got to change and start over. They're throwing the baby out of the bathwater and then trying to change everything. So that's normally the second thing that we see. Finally, when those two things don't work, they're looking at that guy who's hitting really well. So the guy that's hitting well, we're going to copy him. We're going to do all the things that he's doing because he's hitting well and it's working. The coaches like it. The coaches trust him. So I'm just going to copy him. And the problem with that is he's not you. He's not the hitter that you are. You're not his type of hitter he is. And so that's the problem that we run into when we start copying other people. We get away from our game and start playing their game, and their game is not our game, so we don't play well. But instead of trying to mimic what they're doing, you need to go ask them what they're thinking. If you ask them what they're thinking, that would be a better outcome than they're trying to change everything that you do to be exactly like him because you think that's what your coach is looking for, and you think that it'll help you out. Okay? But then when none of that works, now we start getting into, dude, it's mental, right? The mental thing, right? We're not talking to ourselves well. We need to get away. We need to start working on the positive self-talk. Well, you know what? When you're 1 for 28, it's hard to have positive self-talk. Just being real, like it's hard. Like positive self-talk is not what you need in that situation. Now, yeah, you need to change the way you're talking to yourself, but me sitting there looking in the mirror telling myself I'm awesome is not going to help me hit. That's the problem with that, okay? The next one is the breathing. The breathing's good, right? The breathing will slow everything down. It'll slow the game down. It'll slow your thinking down. The problem is if you're triggered, then it doesn't work. Okay? And the last part is going to be focus. Hey, focus on the task. Focus on what you're doing, and you don't even know what it is. So that's the problem with this whole scenario right here. But this is a typical pattern that we see hitters go through. It's poor bats, and it changed up physically with their swing, with their routines, and then they start copying everybody else. And then it becomes mental, where they're going to start working on trying to positive self-talk their way out of hitting, not very well. They can poor bats. And then they're going to breathe their way through being triggered. And then they're going to focus on what? They don't even know. So now, here's the pattern that this is what really happens, okay? This is what we need to be getting at whenever we're working on trying to have good at-bats. So it starts with strategy. It starts with your approach. You need one. Most of us don't have one. Or we have a generic one for everybody. Right? So here's what happens is you need an approach for situations. You need an approach for counts. You need one for pitchers. And you need one for hit pitches. So what ends up happening is if you don't have that, then you get triggered. Right? So when you get triggered, what's happening is you get an emotional effect. So now when you start getting, these are triggers. Like if you don't have an approach for this situation, you're going to get triggered. Or if you don't have good success or good history in that situation, you're going to get triggered. And when you get triggered, you get emotion. And when you get emotional in a baseball game, the game speeds up on you and you get distracted. Same thing with count, pitchers, and pitch type. If you don't have an approach or you don't have good success or in a history in that certain situation, a certain count against certain pitchers, pitch types, you get triggered. And then you get emotional, and then you get distracted. And that is what leads to the poor bat. So what we have to do with hitters is we have to understand our approach is everything that we do that's going to allow it to have good at-bat. We've got to be able to have an approach for situation account. We've got to be able to identify what the triggers are so that we can change the trigger. Then we got to be able to stay neutral with our emotions. We got to neutralize the emotions so that we can stay focused and not get distracted. If we can do that, if we can have an approach for this, then we can start having really good at-bats. So what happens is now I don't have an approach for this. I don't have an approach for this situation, this count, this picture, this pitch type. I get triggered, I get emotional, I get distracted. Now I have poor bat, and then it becomes mental. Then it becomes mental. Okay? And so when we talk about mental, it's emotions, right? You get emotion involved. Your thought, you start thinking the wrong stuff. And then obviously the story that you're telling yourself about that situation, that count, that picture, that pitch type, and the labeling that you're doing in those situations and those approach, that's going to be called upon later on. Okay, but then it becomes physical, right? So the physical part is, us not having rhythm and timing in our swing. That's usually will get you back on track. If you have rhythm and timing in your swing, you'll get yourself back on track. We stop making the adjustments. Every pitcher is different. We need a different approach for every pitcher. So we don't make the adjustments. We don't make mid-at-bat adjustments. We don't make mid-game adjustments. The lack of adjustment is where it manifests itself physically. And then the last part is just seeing the ball. Where is my focus? Is my focus on seeing the baseball, or is my focus on my hands? Is my focus on my bat? Is my focus on trying not to strike out? Where's my focus? See, this understanding here is how we get hitters to hit again. Like when we talk about hitter, I always talk about, hey, how do we know if we're getting better? Like we address triggers, we neutralize emotions, and we eliminate distraction and stay focused, which is going to allow us to have good at bat. Now, the good at bat allow us to neutralize our emotion. It allows us to own our thoughts, organize our thoughts, get in control of our thoughts, which would then allow us to change the story that we tell ourselves and allow ourselves to have consistent outcomes, because we don't believe in all the bull crap that's not true. And then physically, we have rhythm and timing. We're making the adjustment, and we're seeing the baseball really well. So this right here, this is what we do here at Athletic Mission Baseball Academy. That's different than anywhere else. We don't really focus on physical much. We focus on strategy. The strategy will help your mental game. The strategy will help your bat. The strategy will help your physical game. Your approach, your strategy will help all of these things. So let's just break these down a little bit further, all these stuff that you have seen. So situations. So let's just use an example. A trigger would be bases loaded, right? There's a situation. The bases are loaded late in a close game. That will trigger some guys. So what is the trigger? What is the emotion? Is it pressure? Is it excitement? Is it fear of failure? And it's different for everyone based on how they've experienced that situation before. If they've had a coach in this situation and a bases loaded late in close game and he doesn't execute and the coach berates him, then he's probably going to feel the fear of failure. If a coach said, hey man, good job, you had a great at bat, then he's probably going to feel excited about another opportunity to see it. So it's all based on how they experience things, and how they experience things is how they get triggered. So if it's a negative event that they've experienced, then they get triggered, and then they get emotional, and then they get distracted. If it's a good event, then they have a tendency to stay focused more. If it's like they've never had an event at all, or it hasn't been emotional, it's just been neutral, that's even better. So next one, count. The trigger is 0-2, 1-2. That's the trigger. As soon as we get to 1-2, 0-2, what emotions are we feeling? We're feeling pressure. We're feeling anxiety. We're feeling the fear of striking out. And again, it all depends on how each individual hitter experienced that situation. The same thing with pitcher. The trigger is going to be the number one pitcher who can throw his pitch in any situation, any count. Like he's just unpredictable. Like that will trigger somebody. So what the emotion that it triggers? Intimidation, anxiety, self-doubt. You see what's happening here? The trigger is triggering an emotion. And that emotion now is letting all the thoughts go all over the place. And now we're thinking all the wrong stuff. Okay? The same thing with pitcher type. Facing a pitcher with a plus curveball. What does that trigger? Uncertainty, hesitation, and potential frustration. So these are examples, and this goes on forever. Like, I spent a lot of time trying to identify triggers, because I know that if I can find the triggers, I can address the emotion. And if I can address the emotion and neutralize the emotion, then I know we're going to have better at bats. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all after. That's what we're trying to do, is have better at bats. But we have to address this first. We have to address the triggers. We have to address the emotion. So that's why it's important to identify them. We got to go through the process. So let's break down the mental part a little bit further. So we have, again, the emotion, right? So we have frustration from a string of poor performance, poor at bats. We can get frustrated over that. Anxiety over the outcome, over the bat when we're in a slump. Doubt, questioning one's own ability. Pressure, feeling the weight of team's expectation, especially when they're not hitting well. Fear of failure, fear of letting their team down. Fear of not getting out of the slump. Okay? So that's the emotion, again, that triggers us. Okay? Then it starts creating thoughts. Right? So what are the thoughts? It's overanalyzing the situation. We start thinking the wrong stuff. That's what overthinking is. It's overanalyzing. It's thinking the wrong stuff. Looking at the wrong thing. Typically, it's a physical thing. When really we need to look at the at-bat. We need to look at how pitches were approaching us, the pitches we swung at, the pitches that we take. That's the thing we need to look at. There's a prediction. I bet this is going to be another breaking ball. You know, those are the thoughts that these guys are having. Assumption, they're going to pitch around me. Generalization, I messed up anything against the pitcher profile. Catastrophic, I don't get a hit now, I'll probably never get a hit. I'll probably get benched. Okay, these are just thoughts that hitters are having that get them distracted. So again, stories, the inevitable slump. Every season I go through a fade where I can't hit anything. If I constantly tell myself that every season I'm going to go through a fade where I'm not hitting, then dude, that's the story that I'm telling myself. That's the story that I believe. That's what's going to happen. Okay? So then, same thing, dominant pitcher. I've never had good at bat against a lefty with a plus slider. If I tell myself that and I believe that, the moment I see a lefty with a good slider, I'm going to get triggered. And when I get triggered, I'm going to have poor bats. Okay? So that's the story that I'm telling myself. The weight of the moment. Everybody's expecting me to fail. They think I'm not cut out for this situation. That's the story I'm telling myself, and I believe it, then that's what's going to happen. The same thing, external validation. My coaches, my teammates, parents think that I've lost and I'm not capable anymore. If that's the story I'm telling myself, then I'll believe it. And I believe it, then I'm going to get triggered and I'm not going to play well. The comparison, look at how everyone else is doing. I'm the weak link. See, guys, these are examples of the mental part. The mental is the emotions. The mental is the thoughts. The mental is the story that we tell ourselves. If we don't address, so let me go back to the last slide. If we don't address these things, we don't address the triggers and the emotions, then it becomes mental, right? And again, the mental is the emotion that we're going through, the thought that we tell ourselves, and then the story that we tell ourselves and the stories that we believe. These are the issues that we have whenever we start talking about not having good at bat. And most hitters are just looking for good at bat. But we gotta address the triggers. We gotta address the emotion. We gotta address the thoughts. We gotta address the story that they tell themselves. Which then leads to the physical part, right? The rhythm and timing. So when a hitter is not playing well, they have a tendency to overthink the physical stuff of the game, right? So they have a tendency to overthink where their hands are, staying inside, staying back, not lunging, all the crap that they've been told by the coaches. And so what happens is they start becoming overly mechanical. And when they become overly mechanical, they lose the instinctive nature of the swing. And so the swing, when it's instinctive, when it's in rhythm and has timing. So when I have rhythm and timing in my swing, then it becomes distinctive. And that's where we need to make sure hitters are at. But that's the problem is, like, when we start getting on the physical, like, it starts manifest. So if it starts with approach, and it manifests itself mentally, and then now it's manifesting itself physically, it's because we've lost rhythm and timing with the swing. And then we're not making adjustments. Again, every pitcher is different. There are different profiles of pitchers. So for this profile, I need to do this. For this guy, I need to do this. For this guy, I need to do that. And then when I sit in a real baseball game and I'm watching him, okay, this is my generalized approach. Now, what is he specifically doing? I think that's the adjustment that I need to make when I go to the box. If he's constantly throwing pitches that run away from where my swing plays, then I need to make the adjustment. So I need to make adjustments in my stance, in my setup, in my hands, in my posture, in my thinking, in my vision, in my sights. I got to make the adjustments to be able to give myself a chance to get this pitcher. And then last part is seeing the ball. Again, like seeing the baseball allows you to make better decisions. It allows you to see the ball, allows you timing. Seeing the baseball is what we need to be focusing on when we are in the batter's box. All the thinking, all the preparation happens before we get into the batter's box. When we get into the batter's box, that is when we start focusing on seeing the baseball. So I hope all that makes sense. Really what we're trying to say is, right now, traditionally, you think it's physical. You're going from physical mistake, which is making changes in your swing, making changes in your routine, and then copying everybody else. And then when that doesn't work, it manifests itself mentally. And now you're sitting there saying, okay, I need a positive self-talk my way out of this. And that just doesn't work when you don't understand how you're making outs and how you're having poor bats. And then you're sitting there thinking, okay, I'm going to breathe more. But if I get into a situation or a counter, a pitch height, where I get triggered, that's not going to help me. And then I got to focus more. But what am I focusing on? Right? But now when we start saying, hey, the real issue is you not having a strategy. You not having an approach for a situation to count for pitchers and pitch types. And because you don't have that, now you're getting triggered. And when you get triggered, you get emotional. And when you get emotional, you get distracted. Your thoughts go everywhere. Instead of sticking to the game plan and sticking to your thought that you've organized, that you put together, then now you have poor bats. And then the poor bat leads to, again, now it's manifesting itself mentally. It went from strategy to mental, right? And that's about the story that we tell ourselves, about the thought and about our emotion. And then it comes down to the physical part, which is the rhythm and timing, making adjustments, and seeing the baseball. So I hope that all makes sense. It starts with strategy. It starts with your approach. You have to understand that it starts with your approach. If you get to that point and you address the triggers and the emotions, and you get yourself focused, then you got a chance to have good at bat. And I promise you, good hitters, all they want is to have good at bat, have great at bat. They could care less about the outcome. If they consistently have good at bat, then they know that the result will show up in the end. But it's really easy if you have good at bat not to worry about the outcome. But when you're consistently having bad at bat, then you're constantly worried about the outcome because you don't know when the outcome's going to get better. Like you do if you were having good at bat. If you were having a good at bat, you know that eventually the balls are going to fall. I'm barreling up baseball. I'm doing all right. You got to get to that point and you got a chance to do some good stuff. So now, for those of you guys that are watching that are interested in learning more about this approach, man, reach out. Let's work on this together. So the type of people that typically come to us, that come from to Athletic Mission to work with us, the type of hitters that typically come are the ones who are stagnant in their performance. The ones who are struggling with their strategy, struggling with their approach, understanding how to develop one, understanding how to approach each pitcher individually. They're the ones that's coming here. The guys that have college or professional ambition are the ones that are coming here. The guys that are seeking comprehensive training. Again, it's all about having good at bats. We got to address triggers. We got to address emotion. We got to address your thoughts. You know, all those things, that's a comprehensive training. The training is all about how do we get ourselves from having good at bats. It's not about hitting off the tee at the speed, you know, strength and all that stuff. No, it's about having good at bats against good pitchers so that I can have my coaches trust me so that I can play. That's what it's all about. And then the guys that just want mentorship, we have a great mentorship program here. Guys that want that, call us. The desire for quick feedback and coaching. So again, we work with hitters that want to learn how to hit. Guys that have great fundamentals but just cannot figure it out on game day. Those are the guys that work with us. Those are the guys that come here. So if that's you, give us a call, and we'd love to work with you and love to help you out. And then lastly, let's just cover real quick Athletic mission statement. So our mission statement is, at Athletic Mission, we prioritize strategy over swing, preparing hitters for standout success on the field and beyond the field. Our vision statement is, by 2030, Athletic Mission Baseball Academy will be the premier hub for strategic baseball training in the nation, producing 1,000 players who will not only excel on the field, but also in the placement of top-tier colleges, professional, or have great high school seasons, proving that strategy will truly define a game changer in baseball. Hey, we're after something here. We're doing something different here. We're taking the strategy approach and helping guys hit better and having good at bats. Again, I hope this makes sense. If you guys like this, share it with anybody that this would help. Again, we have to work on approach first. You have to address triggers, you have to address emotion, and you have to address distraction. If you can do that, and you can put together a real process and have real good at bats, you got a chance to have great at bats, which can allow you to outplay your athleticism. That's what we see a lot. There's a lot of guys outplaying their athleticism. So again, if you like this, go ahead and subscribe, share this with anybody, give us a call, and let us help you out.